Good evening, everyone. I'm Safia Minney from People Tree. First, to put you out of the burning question, how is People Tree, how is fair trade fashion doing in this global recessionary environment? Well, I'm really pleased to report that sales are up 20% on last spring, so that's a positive start. I'm going to move into my presentation. I've been told to make it at breakneck speed, so please, if you want to lecturette later on, that's absolutely fine too. So if we can move to my next slide, I'm going to introduce what People Tree does. You've heard from Paul that I'm part of this big network of fair trade, working closely in partnership with southern producers, as we call them, at the same time as selling the product and designing a product that's marketable for the British and the European and the Japanese market, which is where People Tree started. We also do a lot of campaigning and advocacy work. If we can move on to the next slide. We're working in 12 countries with 50 producers. Social business, well, you're here because many of you are already involved with social business, so you don't need me to tell you what social business is. But clearly, how we now scale up our social businesses, how we look at mainstreaming the values of our businesses into mainstream business within our sectors becomes absolutely key. In terms of turnover, we're £2 million in the UK, very small. In Japan, £4 million, £6 million overall. I spend a week of my time in Japan every month. Pioneer of fair trade fashion internally, in the forefront of the fair trade movement in Japan. We have 100 employees in London and Tokyo, and 3,000 artisans and farmers that we work with throughout the world. If you go on to the next slide. I'm following very closely what the British Library asked me to do. So I have a 16-year-old GCSE student that has been also told that he must answer the questions in a very self-disciplined way. So that's what I've done. Firstly, who are my inspirations? Well, I left school when I was 17. I went to work within media and publishing, a lovely magazine called Creative Review, and very, very quickly learnt that media and advertising is used not to further social good. And so after 4 years of that, I set up my own marketing and media and communications consultancy. I've always found the idea of using alternative media to really look at how we empower people as being very key. In terms of my fair trade inspiration, of course, Gandhi, and then consumer power, that's you and I, and of course the producer in the field, to really create a network that bridges consumers with producers to create this new sustainable economic model. Thanks. Next slide. We started 17 years ago in Tokyo, in my house. Like many of you, I'm sure, running your businesses in your house. So the bedroom activity became all of the rooms except for one room where 2 children slept in the same bed as me and my husband. It was mad. 17 staff, in the office, which is my house. So mad situation. You've got here my firstborn here in a little basket with an exhibition at the first Eco Products exhibition in Tokyo. A lot of research work on how to support environmental and fair trade activities, and learned very quickly that we had to actually develop these systems ourselves in Tokyo. Moving on, we started firstly with running campaigns, doing research work. We were selling fair trade foods, handicrafts. We started an ethical textile, an eco-textile and fair trade project in garments in '95, and set up the first fair trade and organic supply chain right from the farmer through production that has been awarded Soil Association certification. That's the first product in the developing world. Next slide, please. So working today, we have 30 designers and technicians that work with those 120 producer groups in their villages, helping them to overcome areas of expertise and knowledge requisition in terms of pattern cutting, how to work with new shapes, how to use environmentally friendly dyes, actually developing fibres and fabrics right from the beginning. And this is our first shop in Tokyo. Next slide. So why the need, obviously, as you well know, I think consumers are more and more value-driven. They're not prepared to trade down their ethics. Today, social justice or fair trade is coming together with environmental issues, we're seeing that clearly the two have a very strong relationship, that multinational companies are also undermining the position of farmers. So we're using organic and fair trade cotton to pay a premium of 30%, and then bringing the product through a manufacture train that then pays a premium to manufacturers of 50%. And these are all IFAT or Welfare Trade Organisation partner groups. If I could go on to the next slide. The need, again, why hand skills? It sounds terribly Luddite, doesn't it? Use hand weaving, use hand embroidery. But actually, these are the ways to create livelihoods in the most rural areas. Amongst the most disadvantaged communities, you will find the most incredible breadth and heritage of traditional skills. Well, we can use that in product development. Half of our collection is hand-woven using natural dyes, hand embroidery, like the dress that I'm wearing. And then we have 50%, which is in organic cotton. If I can move on to the next slide. Using hand dyes. This is looking natural dyes. Again, this is reviving some of those natural processes. The next slide. Using hand loom facilities. Usually this is, in Bangladesh, this would be typically a male activity. There are 10 million hand weavers in India and Bangladesh alone. How much could you add? Let's say Robert Fisher of Gap decided to do a hand-woven collection every season, and he just took on a village of 1,000 hand weavers. What enormous difference would that make? He could then scale up. He could go 10,000. He could go 100,000. The weavers are there. They're waiting. It's a tiny piece of capital. It costs £100 for a hand loom. And with that, they can put the food on the table. They can send their children to school. So the intervention that Peopletree has used is that of fabric development, product development, educating the consumer, the difference that hand weaving makes. And in this way, we can supply concessions in Topshop, we can supply ASOS, we can supply 150 boutiques in Europe. This is hand embroidery and block print. I'm going to get a nod to go faster soon. So next slide. Block prints you can see here. The next slide. So collaborations, work a lot in collaboration with designers. Since doing a collaboration with Vogue Japan, working with, well, some of you perhaps in fashion may know Takun and Richard Nichols, some of these really high-profile designer names, Boraxu, for example, Birkenstock, we've done uppers there with hand-woven and hand-embroidered, often working in collaboration with major retailers. So that's with Topshop, a lovely little sweater there. Top tips. Well, I was asked to prepare some top tips. Didn't quite know what to bring you, really. But first, really to be honest about what you bring, what value you and your team are bringing to the marketplace. I think sometimes, we're not as clear as we could be. So what's the value addition that we bring? Number two, you've got to bring, I beg your pardon, back to the next slide. Again, bringing in the people around you, your friends, your family. We've survived, we've kept the company, 75% of the company, other 20% and 25% of the company is actually owned by people who are mission-driven, because we don't want to do what I believe Anita Roddick would not have liked to have done, which was to have sold at a very, very early stage and had to compromise in some ways. But I think, again, bringing people in around you so that you can invest, you can scale up the skills that you don't have, you can bring in. Number three, again, looking at the detail, of course, but not losing sight of the bigger picture. And I think this is really important in scaling up the model. I think we're nearly finished now. Next slide. Shops in Tokyo. As I said, we've got 150 stockists here in Europe and then 300 stockists in Japan. 2 of our own shops, we're looking at launching a shop in London. Most of our business, actually 50% of our business is mail order and 50% wholesale. And I think that's the last slide there. So that's been a race through Peopletree. So, me jumping out of a box, completely irrelevant really, but just, very much, started in a bedroom. And, please ask questions later on. Thank you very much.